Fatty Liver Foundation, another individual who doesn't really need too much of an introduction. I'm just trying to... Wayne, hello, how are you?
Hi. Well, hi, Grace. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. You're looking very smart. So you're going to be discussing the SUNN study. I know you've got a passion for screening, so hopefully this will be a really interesting talk, and then you'll be joining us later for the panel that will follow. So I will hand across to you to work through your slides, and I will see you for the Q&A after.
Okay, fantastic. I would have enjoyed talking to Kathleen about the coffee, but we can go on from here.
Fifth time lucky, Mr. Wayne Eskridge. Hi, Wayne.
Hi, Grace.
It's all right, no problem. The poor audience listen to me. Hi, Rosemary. Did you fix it?
I hope so.
Fantastic. Wow.
Okay. I do see it. And we've spent a lot of time. Sorry about that. That's really embarrassing. But this is my patient journey. My biopsy at 2010, I was told I didn't have disease, went through a lot of stuff like a lot of patients do. In 2015, that's my other biopsy. Clearly, I'm a stage 4 cirrhosis patient. And hey, fantastic. The thing that brought us into the advocacy world, and I really apologize for all this confusion. That's been really frustrating. But when I was diagnosed with cirrhosis, my FibroScan was 21.5. Almost all of this crowd knows what that means. Cirrhosis is typically 14 or more. Over the next 18 months, I reduced that to 9.6, which is what I am today, and I lost 30% of my weight in that time. That experience led us to create the Fatty Liver Foundation, and that brought us face to face with the kinds of problems that patients face as a group. And when we think about advocacy, our public communications in that area, we're looking at the 100 million patients that have fatty liver. Most don't know it. We're also involved in the more serious kinds of advocacy when we look at patient advocacy as such, because these are people that have had the diagnosis and they're afraid and they're looking for information. And so we're looking to support people in that phase of their journey. The lifestyle component is a major discussion that has ramifications for the patient as they're going through a disease process, but it's also a societal issue that we have, because this disease is basically a challenge, a problem created by our society. And that brings us to screening. The thing that mobilized us, the thing that frustrated me terrifically was the two things. When I was diagnosed, the surgeon said, you have cirrhosis, I'm sorry, we have no treatment. That's one kind of shock. The shock that came soon after that was to realize that we don't screen for advancing asymptomatic liver disease. And I remember being really mad. I was angry at times at my doctors because nobody ever talked to me about liver disease or NASH or fatty liver. I had no idea. And that is such a common event that it made us look into why, and the reason is that it's the standard guidance that you don't look for liver disease absent symptoms. And so if we take a look at what the patient's view of the community is, primary care has little time for liver disease. By surveys, we know that 70% only refer for high ALST. It's very common for people to go through years of strange diagnosis, strange symptoms before they actually arrive at a diagnosable cirrhosis stage. Excuse me. Gastroenterologists don't have a lot of serious concern about asymptomatic NASH. And the advice that people get is lose weight and exercise. And we live in a culture where everybody's tried to diet. Everybody's yo-yoed. Diet industry is a $70 billion a year failure. And the issue with the patient is that lacking the kind of support that it takes to successfully change the lifestyles, most people will fail. And as we thought about that, we looked around at it and really to see, what kind of recommendations were made. And there's a lot of organizations that recommend screening for at-risk people. One of the gaps there is with the AASLD, which, is our particular concern because although lots and lots of hepatologists are advocates of intercepting this disease early, the standard guidance is really not to screen. And we understand the economic arguments about that, but it still is an issue for us. And this, for us, it creates a moral hazard. We believe that ignoring asymptomatic NASH, it carries a moral hazard with it because that is a serious disease. It's even in its early stages, it's consequential. F1 NASH is more dangerous than diabetes. F2 NASH is more hazardous than smoking. We care very much about diabetes and smoking. We don't care much at all about NASH. And so, those are things that cause us as the Fatty Liver Foundation to be quite concerned. So what do we do about that? One of the consequences of not identifying early stage NASH is when you decide that you're actually going to do something about it and you need people for clinical trials, since you don't identify them, you really don't have enough people, and that's the place we find ourselves today. So beyond the personal patient desire to have early diagnosis and early warning about our disease, the profession needs to identify people at an early stage, and the SUNN study was born out of that. What we see is the 100 million fatty liver patients and the 86 million or 100 million diabetes patients, and that creates a comorbid community of about 40 million people that are currently ill. They may or may not know it, but we don't effectively screen for that population. So the SUNN study hypothesis, we wanted to show if there was a worried well cohort that would proactively seek testing if offered, and would they demonstrate an enhanced level of disease even though They were technically asymptomatic. And by offering to test people, and these are people that are not currently engaged by medicine. One of the exclusions was that they had never had a liver disease diagnosis. And so the SUNN study was built to test that in the community. And the way we did it is that we took a FibroScan out into the community, and a lot of clinics and things offer free scans and that sort of thing. But for us, we took it out where the people were. We took it into the community where people lived, and we didn't make them travel to see us, and we didn't make them jump through a lot of hoops and expensive things in order to have the test. We did this in South Houston and the Galveston County, in areas where we had a high ethnic population. And in fact, our most successful location was actually the Mexican consulate in Houston. So we were testing whether the level of concern within the population was sufficient that they would self-select and go to the trouble of participating. This began in December of 2018, and we took a history as part of the protocol. And after screening, we spent time with the patients, providing them with information about the test, its results. We couldn't diagnose, but we gave them a lot of information about it. We directed them to where they could get more information. And one of the important things was that created a teachable moment where we were able to engage with those people in a way and at a time that was convenient to them and meaningful to them, and they interacted with us very, very well. So just to look at the patient recruitment, we actually did protocols on 1,070 people. 96 we were unable to successfully scan, so they were eliminated. Through the questionnaire, since we did not accept people that already had a diagnosis of liver disease, 19 fell out there. We were excluding binge drinking and heavy alcohol, so we excluded some of those. So we ended up with 940 in our study, 65% female, 60% Hispanic. And these were an average age of 47. Now, an interesting thing was that we had 250 people come to us who knew they had liver disease, and they knew of our exclusion, but they wondered if we would test them, and we did. We didn't keep records and we didn't enroll them, but there's a strong desire in the population of people that are dealing with the disease to be able to have monitoring tests, and I thought that was interesting. So I look at the demographics. Highly Hispanic in that area, a significant African American area, as you would have expected. It was largely female, but this is an interesting slide. When these are the age distribution as that we collected, and if you'll notice, the 40 to 50 age bracket is really our peak. And we think of this disease and we talk about it in terms of people that are older than that. And this suggests to me that what we're seeing demonstrated here is the leading edge of the tsunami of disease. These are people in the middle years that have reached a point where they're concerned about their health to the point that they will go to the trouble of having this test. And the older population did not show up for us. Just some brackets as to how this was done. We know that FibroScan's not diagnostic, but we're stuck with these categorizations. And these are ones that are commonly used to break people out into these various groups. To give you a sense of how the distribution was, we found 24% of the people that showed up had neither steatosis or fibrosis indications. But there were 2% that were lean, could be considered lean NASH. 6% were steatosis but didn't have fibrosis, and the fibrosis group was at 15%. Then we actually had almost 2% that were clearly cirrhotic and didn't know it, had never been diagnosed. This just gives you the breakdown on the transient elastography. As you can see, there is an interesting fact in this study. If you remember, the general breakdown of our population was about 2/3 female. But as you can see here, as they got into the higher level stiffness scores, instead of a 2-to-1 ratio of male to female or female to male, we get up into the 4, 5, 6 times, which clearly shows that the things we know about women advancing faster is indicated by our results. We have a real example of how robustly obese we are, because by far our largest cohort was an S3 steatosis grade. We looked at the odds ratios of the various parts of our survey, and they're all of the normal things. I mean, there's nothing here that would be surprising. We see that obesity is clearly the biggest risk for us. All of the metabolic syndrome aspects showed up. One of the things that you might find interesting is in the age scoring for the CAP, the odds ratio was higher for the 40s to 49 than it was for the 60s, which is one of the things that did surprise me. In the stiffness scores, these are, again, the typical things that we all know. But one thing that showed up that I thought was interesting, that people were reporting arthritis at a level that was twice that of their diabetes. And we don't see a lot of studies of arthritis as a comorbid issue with NASH, but this raised an interesting question for me that I'd like to know more about. Fast food obviously is an issue. If we look about what the protective factors are, it's what your grandma said, eat your vegetables. The more vegetables that people reported having, the lower their odds ratio. I did think it was interesting in the comparison of exercise, because the strength training was more protective for CAP and steatosis, and cardio exercise was more protective for stiffness. And again, it's the more, the better. If you summarize those, we found 13 variables that had statistical significance. 10 were related to FibroScan scores of combined steatosis and CAP, but 7 of these are metabolic syndrome. So this just confirms the comorbid relationship that, you know, we've highlighted all the way along. So as a little summary, you know, we recommend a diet high in vegetables, limited strength training, and cardiovascular workouts. So diet and exercise. So what do you take home from this? The screening for asymptomatic disease who self-identify is we believe, a feasible and acceptable way to enrich a cohort in real life settings. And these are people that then not only learn about their health situation, but there's an opportunity to educate them about their opportunities to participate in clinical trials. And that's the 2 parts of our mission: education and enhanced clinical trial engagement. When we provide immediate information, people are very accepting of that. They're very appreciative of getting that information, and we found it to be a very effective way to engage them in what we believe are effective communications about lifestyle and in their diet. It was an opportunity to get people who needed to be linked to care into that environment. That there were about 17% of our population that we felt should have been already engaged with the medical community, and so that was an important number of people. Okay, we've got a program going on. SUNN 1 was the first step. We'll be doing what we call a SUNN screen, where we hope to do 3,000 people looking at non-invasive blood testing. And SUNN 2 is our major project, which has a goal of 20,000 patients, which got blown up by COVID, but we hope to resurrect one of these days. So I'd like to acknowledge all the people that participated, and especially Dr. Verling, who's was my co-investigator there in Baylor. And I think that with all the confusion at the start, we're probably done. So.
You caught me just sorting out my hair before I came on then. Hi, Wayne.